My name is Michaela Elia. I'm the community intern for the International Relations Council, and I would like to tell everybody good evening and welcome to tonight's program. We're happy to see all of your faces and that you could join us tonight. With the permission of everybody here, we will be recording tonight's event and streaming to Facebook Live. So if you would not like to be featured in the recording, please feel free to mute your microphone and turn off the camera now. And if you have any questions about tonight's event or future IRC programs, you can contact John Hartnett at jhartnett@irckc.org. And if you enjoy this program, please consider joining the IRC or donating to support future programming. All links will be made available through the chat feature, and we will be starting the recording now. But without further ado, tonight's program is Lexicon, bite-sized language intros. So this event is meant to bring you the basics of a new language as well as culture and history. And tonight's language is German, brought by Jutta Bennen and Scott Baker. Jutta Bennen was born in Cologne, I hope I said that right, Germany. After graduating from Humboldt University in Berlin, she worked as a consultant and lecturer in German as a foreign language and theater in Germany, and Belarus, Uzbekistan, France, England, and the United States. She is excited to create a platform for encounter, exchange, and new perspectives as the managing director for Kansas City's first pop-up in the Goethe Institute. And Scott Baker is the Associate Professor of German in the Foreign Languages Department at University of Missouri, Kansas City. His research focuses on drama, theater history, and performance theory in the German-speaking countries between the mid-18th and early 20th centuries. His most recent publications include a co-authored article on collaboration in the forthcoming issue of Feminist German Studies and a book chapter on the German theater director Peter Stein for Felicia Londra's edited volume on the great stage directors. So if you would like to talk more about the Goethe Institute and then start your presentation, that would be great.
So I think we'll start by doing some interactive things. And the weird thing about our interactive things is that you're not going to interact with us because we're going to ask you to turn all your mute all your microphones, because there would be just too many voices. But we encourage you to speak along or to decipher along. We're going to start speaking some German and showing you some German, and start out by talking a little bit about how German and English share a lot of connections. Oops, I guess I have to.
No,
Yep,
that's
right.
Mm-hmm.
So we will work from a PowerPoint here. So English is a Germanic language, and that simply means that a long time ago, English and German were part of the same language, or they essentially were the same language, and then as languages evolved, they split apart. And that split means that we still have lots of connections back together. So, for example.
Mein Name ist Jutta. Wie ist dein Name?
Ich heiße Scott. Wie heißt du?
My name is Jutta. What is your name?
My name is Scott. And what's your name?
Ich heiße Jutta.
Mein Name ist Scott. Can you understand German? I'm going to say a few simple phrases about myself, and I'm going to give you a chance to then read the statements, and then I'll show you what they mean. But as you're listening and reading, try to make some guesses as to what I'm saying. Mein Name ist Scott Baker. Ich komme aus Eugene, Oregon. Mein Name ist Scott Baker. Ich komme aus Eugene, Oregon. Ich schwimme oft und gehe oft ins Ausland. Ich schwimme oft und gehe oft ins Ausland. Heute ist Mittwoch, der erste Mittwoch im Mai. Heute ist Mittwoch, der erste Mittwoch im Mai. Mein Geburtstag ist im Dezember. Mein Geburtstag ist im Dezember. So those are all very simple things that I can say about myself that I think most English speakers would pick up either from listening and certainly from reading. We talk in linguistics about language families, and the Indo-European family is a very large family, right? So all of the European languages and then some languages stretching back into the east as far as India. So Persian, for example, is also an Indo-European language, but all of the modern languages spoken in Europe are Indo-European languages. Now, German used to be spoken by all of the Germanic invading tribes back in the early first millennium. But at some point, and linguists aren't quite sure why, but at some point they started breaking apart. And linguists have identified what they call the second sound shift as the cause for that evolution into different branches of language. And that took several centuries. So they think it happened sometime between 300 and 800. That is to say, before 300, there are no signs of it. After 800, the sound shift is finished. It's made its stamp in the various languages. So what I'd like to do is show you some German words and then have you at home guess for yourself what the English equivalent is going to be. And that's a little bit backwards because, in fact, historically and linguistically, German didn't change into English. That is, English didn't evolve out of German. English actually stayed the same as it was. It was the older language, and it was German that transformed into a new direction. But we're going to do that a little bit backwards so that you can look at a German word and then guess the English equivalent. So, Schiff, the German F, and sometimes a double F, has its equivalent as a P in English. So a Schiff is a ship. Or we have this verb, schaffen. And if we replace the F's with a P, it means to shape. And this is the verb, the German verb for to create. So, ich schaffe ein neues Buch. I create a new book. Or reif. Very simple, straightforward. Ripe, we talk about ripe fruit, but reif also means mature in German. So I can talk about a ripe person. I'm not old, I am ripe. Another consonant shift was from an S or a double S to a T. So our Fuß turned into a foot. Aus, which is a preposition, turned into out. I go out the door. And essen, the T turns, or the S's turn into a T, and we elongated our vowel to turn it into eat. Essen is the German verb to eat. Another consonant shift was from the Z to T. So a Zunge is what I use to speak, right? It's my tongue. Or zwei is a number, and we can probably guess that that is the number 2. And Zahlen, it means to count. And you're probably thinking, wait a minute, Zahlen and to count don't sound anything alike. But actually, when we turn that Z to a T, it turns into the verb in English to tally. And we don't use that verb very often anymore, but to tally and to count are synonyms, right? And we got our verb to tally from the German verb zahlen. Another set was the B to the V. So geben turned into to give. A Grab is a grave. And our preposition über with the V turns into over. And a final quick set, the D to an English TH. So mein Bruder in English is my brother, and denken is to think. And in Eid, I swear an oath. So these are just a few of the consonant shifts that happened in the second second sound shift. If you know the collection of consonant shifts, it makes it really easy to deduce a whole ton of German words and figure out what their English equivalents are. It's one of the reasons why I say learning German for speakers of English is actually a lot easier than a lot of people will make it out to be. At this point, I'd like to see if you have any questions about that little linguistics lesson. And we're going to have an opportunity at the very end also to have some discussion and ask questions too. So this first part was focused on showing you some of the correspondences between German and English. But for better or worse, there are not only correspondences. There are differences too.
I have a question. My name is Pam. I actually just started taking German, I want to say about a month ago, and the quarantine started. It seemed like a really great opportunity to practice something new and have the mental space to do so. But I also noticed that oftentimes words like Vasa would be W, or like vetting is wedding. In Berlin, there's a city called Vetting, but it's spelled wedding. So is that another one of the translations that, I don't know how that correlates similar to what you just mentioned, but I think that's what I'm consistently seeing.
Mm-hmm. Right, so Wasser is actually functions in the same way, right? The double S turned into a T to make our English word water. Vetting is not a cognate. Our word marriage, if you think of that ending for marriage, I-A-G-E, that looks like a Latin or French base. And what happened in English is we adopted a whole ton of vocabulary from the Latin languages, especially French, because England and France kept invading each other, and they had populations that would be going back and forth. And at that time, this is the early second millennium, there was a lot of adoption of French words and Latin words into English. So wedding, our word for a wedding, marriage came, but wedding itself, I don't know. But it didn't come from German, because the German word for marriage is actually Ehe. But there is a neighborhood in Berlin called Wedding. You're right.
I think what Pam was asking about was the pronunciation of the V and the W. The W sounds like fetting instead of wedding.
We're going to talk about this in a second, actually, that we just have that the same letters in our both languages is pronounced differently. And this is just an example for that, where the W in English is pronounced differently in German, like a V. Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge for English and German learners because our W and our V are exactly the opposite sounds, right? So in English, W is actually a V in German, and our V is a F in English. V is a German F.
Great, thank you so much.
Any other questions at this point? Then I would say we keep on going and we save the time for later for discussion. So this was actually a great question because it lends to the next topic. So after hearing so much about similarities between our languages, I would like to focus a little bit about differences. And I was nicely introduced by Michaela, and you can see my name here, which is, try to pronounce it as an American. That's what I hear very often. Oh, hello, Jada. Jada. My name in German is pronounced Jutta, right? I show to you how it's written in German, but pronounced it differently. Because, of course, we pronounce the same letters in a different way. And just going with my name for a second, so the Y in German, the Y is pronounced is a J in English. So like in Julie or Judy, right? But we pronounce the Y like you pronounce it in yogurt or in yucca palm tree, like the Y. Another one is the U. Written U. We both have those letters in both languages, but you pronounce it as a A, we pronounce it as a U. What happens with T, with the T? Same letter, two T's means just short in German. Oh, this was probably too loud. You pronounce it very soft in the middle of a word. Here, like in butter, right? Butter. For us, it's actually the same word, Butter, Butter. Now you can understand why my name is pronounced Jutta. Mein Name ist Jutta. And it's a challenge. And I know this, and I sometimes have to apologize for my name because it gives Americans such a hard time to pronounce. And another very, very hard one I want to show you in the next example, which is the word Brötchen. Ich esse oft Brötchen. What a Brötchen is, you can see in the little picture. So maybe you know that we Germans are crazy about bread. And so we love bread and bread rolls like Brötchen. Scott, can you pronounce Brötchen for me?
Brötchen.
Try again. So it's not a R, it's a R, Brötchen.
Brötchen.
Too long. Brötchen. Sure.
Brötchen.
Much better, much better. Now look at the little O with the little dots on top. It's actually an Ö. You have to kiss for it. Brötchen.
Brötchen.
That's too open, but much better. Okay, now let's focus on the CH, which is the sound of a. Can you do that? Yeah, that's good. And now the whole word Brötchen.
Brötchen.
Yeah, good. Much, much, much better. I wanted to show you this word, not only because we love eating it, but it consists, you see here, three sounds that don't exist in the English language, which are the sounds R, the sound Ö, and the sound h. And that's something you just have to practice. Yeah, it has sometimes to do with physiology and with muscle training, and it's just one of those differences. Let's go to similarities and differences at the same time, actually. I took the example from Scott and showed you words that are very, very similar. So, die Hand, right? The hand. Maybe you already hear the difference. Hand, hand. We pronounce the A differently, and the and consonant, which is a D, written as a D, in German we pronounce pretty hard as a T, like a hand, like, Entschuldigung, sorry, like Hand. Hear that? That's why I wrote it here with a little T, so to just make it clear, it's pronounced differently. Another example, the same words, so, zoo. What we do here, so we have the O loud, which is different compared to the zoo in English, but most important, the beginning, the Z in German, it becomes a S. And maybe you remember the sound shift, right? And the shift from the Z to the, from the Z to the, from the T to the Z. So we actually kept a little bit of the T just in pronunciation. We don't write it anymore, but we pronounce it. So. Another difference, which is sometimes really hard and was so hard for me to learn when I learned English, and I still make those mistakes. Heard that. Charakter, character. It's just the stress, which is different, right? So the character for you, but the Charakter for us. And the stress in German is strong. Another word is, I start with English now, energetic. Think how it's pronounced in German. Energisch. Energisch. So differences, and I keep on making mistakes with that, I tell you. So stress and different pronunciation of some sounds, consonants, or vowels are big, yeah, can be challenging, big differences. So it's helpful to understand the difference. And second, what's helpful? To train. So I thought we practice a little bit. If you don't want to embarrass yourself too much, switch off your microphones. And I thought, just follow me, okay? So I say a word and you just repeat it for yourself to practice. I start with myself. Jutta. Charakter. Energisch. Brötchen. Hand. Zoo. Very, very good. And now we try a whole sentence. It's a long sentence, I know. Juttas Charakter ist energisch und sie isst gern Brötchen mit der Hand im Zoo. And now you. Very good. Dankeschön.
So the verb system in German and English still has a lot of correspondences, but it's also one of these areas where we see similarities and we also see changes. Now, some of you who are familiar with language learning, have learned other languages, have probably encountered the idea that some verbs are normal or regular, and some verbs have crazy changes and they are irregular. But in German, we typically don't use that, that distinction. We talk instead about weak verbs and strong verbs. Weak verbs are totally predictable. They correspond to what in those other languages are called regular verbs. But strong verbs are not irregular because there are patterns. There are 7 patterns for verbs, for strong verbs in German. I don't want to talk about the patterns today, but I do want to point out how similar many of these strong verbs are in German and in English. So the first one that I've got up here, and I've put the present tense and then the simple past tense and then the present perfect, right? So I sing, ich singe. I sang, ich sang. And I have sung, ich habe gesungen. We can see that English and German have exactly the same vowel changes in the different tenses of this verb. In other verbs, we can recognize our English verb even though the vowel change is sometimes a little bit different. So, ich finde, I find, ich fand, I found, ich habe gefunden, I have found, right? I give, I gave, I have given. I see, I saw, I have seen. But then look at kommen, right? I come, ich komme, ich kam, ich bin gekommen. So German, when they use the present perfect, they have 2 helping verbs, 2 different helping verbs instead of just have, right? In English, it's always I have done, I have read, I have seen, I have walked, I have traveled. But in German, we have to memorize which verbs demand sein as the helping verb and which demand haben as the helping verb. Doesn't change the meaning. It's just a different helping verb. So we see the same thing with schwimmen, right? Ich schwimme, ich schwamm, I swam, ich bin geschwommen, I have swum. And here's some examples of weak verbs. And in English, we still have these verb endings on our parts of speech. So if we think about to dance, I danced, and I have danced. And that final D, or what's usually an ED in English verbs, corresponds to the T on these verb parts, right? So ich tanze, ich tanzte, ich habe getanzt, ich koche, I cook, ich kochte, ich habe gekocht, ich fühle, ich fühlte, ich habe gefühlt, ich höre, I hear, ich hörte, I heard, ich habe gehört, I have heard. And suchen means to seek, right? To look for. Ich suche, ich suchte, ich habe gesucht, right? In English, that verb is no longer connected to its German, right? I seek, I sought, I have sought. Something different happened with that verb in the transformations of the second sound shift. But what I always like to emphasize the correspondences between English and German. I think when you know where to look for the connections, and especially if you practice reading, if you're looking at these words and you know the tricks of the second sound shift, I think you can have a lot of success in picking up at least the gist of some basic texts in German. And you can use that reading proficiency or your knowledge of the language that you get from reading to help you learn speaking, listening, and of course, writing. So before we get to your questions and some discussion, we also wanted to talk a little bit about the cultural offerings that are possible here in Kansas City.
Right. Thank you. So we cannot talk about language without talking about culture, right? Here you see Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. By the way, we have the Ö again, just written differently, but the Ö again. Well, maybe you know this poet, writer from this great drama, which is called Faust. And I just present you Goethe. Oh, I have another book here. I just have to show it to you. So this guy just wrote so much. This is the compendium of Goethe quotes. Actually, we wanted to bring in some quotes from Goethe, but we thought we saved the time because look at that. Yeah, that's my head next to it. So that's how thick this book is. So okay, we saved this for later. Okay, Goethe quotes. And I wanted to introduce you to Goethe because he's the name giver of the Goethe Institute, which is the official cultural institute of Germany, active worldwide. And the Goethe Institute promotes the study of the German language and encourages international cultural exchange. So the Goethe Institute is actually a very good source where you can also learn the German language. If you haven't yet, take German classes, courses. Right now, online would be recommended. Well, nothing else is possible. And of course, there are other sources in Kansas City that probably even Scott can tell you more about if you're interested in learning a language. So you can learn the language with the Goethe Institute or practice the German language if you already know some German in the Goethe Popup. So that's where I work here in Kansas City, and we're a temporary mini branch of the Goethe Institute. And our goal is to present contemporary German art and culture here in Kansas City, so to this community, and work together with local partners. And we organize and support projects in the arts, so in the cultural field, which includes artistic exhibits, theater, film, music, and so on and so on. Maybe you've been to some of our events in the last year. Maybe you've seen, lest we forget, this big Holocaust exhibition we got put up at World War I Memorial, or you went to the Blue Room Jazz Club where we brought German jazz bands. They performed there together with local jazz bands, and this was just great. And if times hopefully get better soon, we might still be able to do that and bring more jazz here and get, jazz bands together. Or maybe you saw a German movie at Stray Cat Movie Cinema, Stray Cat Film Center, I'm sorry, a great partner beside the Blue Room and others like the IRC. Thanks again for the invitation. Just briefly, where can you look up what the Goethe Institute is doing? Scott, I think I need your help.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get out of the...
It's his computer. Okay, just briefly wanted to show you the webpage of the Goethe Institute USA, which you can see in the left upper corner, Goethe Institute USA, and the pages exist in English and in German. So it's also very helpful to train your German by reading it, right? Lots of information on those pages, so just look through them, and through Standorte, locations, you will find the Goethe Popup in Kansas City, and this is us here. We have a space which is temporarily closed, of course, in the Crossroads on 19th and Main. But we offer a lot digitally right now. Oh, we're on the German page now. Oh, why not? We introduce you to German. So Veranstaltungen means events. So this is our event calendar. When you click on that, you see there's still a lot happening. And the best way to stay tuned what we are doing is, of course, through social media or through our newsletter. And you can subscribe to this on our webpage. Now let's get back to our presentation. I'll try my best here. Yes. Okay. And I think that was the most important. I wanted to tell you about the Goethe Institute and the Goethe Popup here to experience German culture. And I think we would love to start a discussion with you. Probably it's a good idea to unmute microphones if you wanted to, or I don't know if some questions came through the chat, Michaela, but we have another.
Jutta and Scott, I have a question for you. And first I have to say vielen Dank, and I have very limited and rusty German, so you'll have to excuse me. Could you talk a little bit about German-speaking communities in the US? Because I know that they are out there. And maybe with the passage of time, you know, people inherited this language, but I know that there have been some communities. I would love to hear more.
So we actually, at the University of Kansas, have one of the foremost researchers on American dialects of German. So these communities who immigrated as early as the late 17th century, right? So the late 1600s, where we have German immigrants coming in pursuit of religious freedom because they're escaping persecution in their own home states. And they create communities that hold together very, very coherently over time. And they continue to speak the German more or less the way that they brought it with them. So I, as a speaker of modern High German, cannot understand these people. If I were to go to some of the communities which are in northern Kansas or in southern Nebraska, or there's even a dialect called Texas German, Germans who settled in Texas. They have their own dialect of this kind of German that was brought over in the mostly 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. People who grow up in those communities then also would not be able to go to Germany today and make themselves understood or understand the German that was being spoken all around them, right? It's the language has progressed in such divergent ways that although if you look at, like, many of these communities are still very religious, very pious. And so if you look at their songbooks or their Bibles, they are a different language than the Bible you would see at a evangelical or a Catholic church in Germany.
Great, thank you.
A similar question from Oscar. He says, hi, and thank you for doing this presentation. But his question is, why does he hear that Southwestern German and Swiss German are hard to understand and even speak?
Shall I?
Yes, please.
So the split between English and German grows ever greater the farther you move from the Northwest. So here's England in the very Northwest of Europe. And then as you move southeast towards Austria, that the difference gets greater and greater. So the German that is spoken in Southern Austria, for example, is much different, has fewer correspondences to English than the German that is spoken in the north of Germany, right? Now, the Southwest is also its own dialect, or its own cluster of dialects, let's say, which is still also quite distant from English. So we're talking here about Swabian, which is a dialect that is predominant in the Black Forest area of Southwest Germany. And we're talking about Alemannic, or Swiss German, which is spoken in the northern and eastern parts of Switzerland, but you probably know that Switzerland has 4 official languages, and the western part of Switzerland is primarily a French-speaking region, and the southern kind of sliver is an Italian-speaking region.
I think I would like to add to that too. So when we talk about German, so we have different dialects, like English has different dialects, and especially here in the United States. And we also have varieties of the German language. So German is spoken in Germany, in lots of countries, but the most important, I would say, Germany, Austria, and Swiss. And and what we talk about is there's 3 or different varieties of the German language. It's not dialects, for example. So there's a Germanic German, there's an Austrian German, there's a Swiss German, and they're all equally treated. And it's a difference between a variety of the German language to a dialect, which is Bavarian or Swabian or Kölsch, where I'm from in Cologne. So just wanted to add that to this question.
Another question from Jeremy. He says, also, thank you for the fun presentation. And his question is, how would you describe the German sense of humor? And what are some contemporary movies or TV shows that Germans would find funny?
Wow. I think when Germans talk about humor, it's, we shall maybe share something out of our experience, right? Because we have this experience very often that I watch, for example, a German TV show or a German movie. One of the last was called, I have to remember the name. It was a TV movie, so not very popular here, I would say. I found it so funny. I was laughing. I said, this was so great. This was wow, so funny. And then, Scott, please watch it with me. And so we watched it again. Scott watched it with me, and Scott looked at me and said, this was funny. This was, I don't know, but not funny. So we have a very different understanding of humor. That's what I can say. I cannot describe the differences very well, I think. What would you say? Why do we look at this so differently?
Well, humor is a very tricky and fuzzy thing, and what people consider funny is extraordinarily subjective. There are some rules. So as a literary scholar, I have read books that try to explain humor, and I don't find any of them particularly successful. And I've lived in Germany for, all told, like 6 years now. And I still very often don't get the German sense of humor. Perhaps because in English, or at least in the United States, but I think it's a habit in most English-speaking countries, we tend to use sarcasm and irony very often for humor. And I think Germans use sarcasm and irony for different things. It's not really the basis of their humor to the extent that it is in English-speaking countries. So that already predisposes me to certain kinds of funny things, or things that I think of as funny, and prejudices me against other types of humor, right?
And an example too, I try the best to think the whole time about German comedies and funny TV series, and they don't come immediately to my mind. Maybe this is also an interesting answer to this. And the movies I would come up with, they always have I had a student who said, German movies, they're always bittersweet. And I thought this was so right. So even when we do comedies, they have this bittersweet tone, sound, feeling, something to that. But I'll keep on thinking why maybe we take the next question. Or if somebody of you has recommendations, I would be happy. I only think of Till Schweiger movies, and I don't want to recommend them.
There was there's a podcast radio show called Away with Words that talks about language. And a few weeks ago that they mentioned Anti-Witz, which is this German way of telling a joke, and the punchline has nothing to do with the joke. And apparently Germans find these hilarious. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I would agree. Yeah.
There was a question in the chat about if everybody speaks, I'm going to mispronounce this, Hochdeutsch.
Hochdeutsch. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Everybody that if necessary. And Christine said that you were all typically taught that in schools. Is that correct?
This is correct. Yes. Hochdeutsch is also a yeah, we cannot say a dialect, but it's actually kind of an idea of standard German. So when you, for example, listen to the German news, so the most important, most famous, the Tagesschau, these people are trained in this High German, Hochdeutsch, which we like to describe as standard German. It's something we agreed on, or for example, I read the words to you. So this was also in Hochdeutsch, so in standard German. So this is what everybody tries to speak or to understand or to teach. But dialects are still spoken, and dialects are also spoken in schools. And it's sometimes a little bit different from the region in Germany, where it's still used more stronger, even in schools, or less strong. So I think Bavaria is a good example, especially the South. It's interesting, always the South comes up, because they still stick a little bit stronger to their dialects. Yeah.
So the first year that I spent in Germany was in Bavaria, because my father was a high school German teacher, and he got a Fulbright grant to have a teacher exchange. So a teacher from there came and taught German at my high school, and he went over and taught English over there. And I went to the 10th grade, and I sat in classes, and that's where I learned German. And I learned German because all of my teachers spoke High German in the classroom. Even though Bavaria is very proud of their dialect, when it comes to the education system, they are required to speak High German in the classroom. My father did not improve his German one bit that entire year, because in the teacher's lounge, they only spoke Bavarian, and my father couldn't understand a word of it. So he would have to persuade them or ask them to speak High German with him so that he could understand what they were saying. But I never had to do that because they spoke High German in the classroom.
Where in Bavaria was that?
Just to the south, about 30 kilometers south of Munich, a small town called Wolfratshausen.
And everybody, I'd like to jump in just for a quick second. My name is Matthew. I'm with the International Relations Council. We're just thrilled to have you all here with us this evening. And especially grateful to Jutta and the Goethe Popup, because they are one of the newest organizational members of the International Relations Council. So we thank them for that. I'd also like to point out someone else who is on the call, who represents another organization associated with Germany, and that is Dr. Chaltacola, who is the head of the Sister City Committee for Kansas City, Missouri, that's connected with Hanover in Germany. And so we do have a very robust network of Germans and people interested in Germany in Kansas City. And so we certainly encourage all of you to get involved in these many different ways with Germany in Kansas City.
We've got one more question from Laura. She asked if you could give an example on sentence order.
Excuse me. Yeah, and this is where German and English are no longer even remotely close, right? So German has these word order rules that on the one hand are flexible because there's a case system. So in English, when I say I see him, well, that's a bad, I see the dog, right? There's nothing that tells me that I am looking at the dog instead of the dog looking at me, except for word order. But in German, there are case markers, so that I can say the dog see I, or I see the dog, and the word order is completely irrelevant, because the markers are going to tell me, oh, I'm doing the looking at the dog regardless of the word order. On the other hand, there are some really stringent rules that cannot be broken, and the ones that are most difficult for English learners to pick up are when verbs knock other verbs to the back of the sentence. So compound predicates, that's just a linguistic phrase that means there's more than one verb in a sentence. So, for example, I will be going to school tomorrow has 3 verbs in it, right? And they all come as a cluster right in the middle. In German, you can't have a cluster in the middle. You can only have one verb in the middle. And any other verb that's in the sentence has to go to the very, very back, right? So it's a pretty easy rule to remember and to internalize. It's a much more difficult rule to put into practice when you're trying to speak in a fluid way. And you have to remember, okay, this is the verb that I'm going to keep in the middle, and these are the ones that are going to go to the back. And I have to remember to put them back there at the time that I finally end my sentence, right?
Okay, well, we don't have any more questions, and I do want to be respectful of everybody's time tonight. So we would like to thank our hosts, Scott and Yuta, for providing your time and talents this evening. And again, I want to remind everybody that all of the links are available in the chat bar. And thank you for coming to tonight's presentation of Lexicon. We appreciate everybody's attendance, and we hope you enjoyed the program as much as we did. And thank you for coming, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you to all, and thank you to the IRC for the invitation.
Vielen Dank und tschüss.
Cheers.
Tschüss.
Cheers.
Let me look at them.